Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we are discussing the return of the Phoenician Fulgrim, and the possibility he could face his own clone. A spoiler warning for today, as we are going to be referencing events from the Warhammer 40k novel Fabius Bile, Clonelord, by author Josh Reynolds. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay, so a few months ago we found out that the Emperor's children were being taken out of the Chaos Space Marine Codex. And well, that set the alarm bells ringing immediately for the Emperor's children to get their own codex at the end of this edition, with the big triumphant return of Fulgrim himself to go along with it. It's the same thing that happened with the World Eaters when Angron returned, so it definitely seems like it's very possible, and indeed most likely going to happen. I'll admit my prediction was for Asdrubal Vect to be the next big return at the end of this edition. But I'm certainly not going to be complaining getting another Primarch. The Phoenician returning to the galaxy in a big way, in whatever grand event happens to see out this edition, is going to be awesome. Just what the future holds, who knows? At this point the guesses and predictions are limitless. But though it wouldn't happen during this event, more likely just a prospect for the future, shall we say, the return of the Demon Primarch Fulgrim just absolutely has to bring up the spectre of his clone returning too. Now, if you're not familiar with the clone of Fulgrim, I strongly recommend you check out the Fabius Bile series of novels, in particular the novel Clonelord. Fabius Bile is the legendary chief apothecary of the Emperor's children, a man obsessed with genetic manipulation, following in the Emperor's footsteps, and even surpassing him. For decades he attempted to clone the Primarchs, and though he failed many times, it was he who cloned the fallen War Master Horus, who was faced down and destroyed by Abaddon the Despoiler. And it was Fabius who created a perfect clone of his own Primarch Fulgrim. And the effect that the mere presence and sight of this Fulgrim had on the fallen Emperor's children was truly breathtaking. Fabius, Alcanex said hesitantly, before Fulgrim could reply. Hoarsely, I knew you were hiding something, but not this. I did not expect this. He gazed at the looming clone with an expression of beatific awe. When did you do this? What does it matter now? It changes everything, Fabius. He is the Primarch, the Phoenician, as he was then. And as he should be now, Fabius said. He looked at Alcanex. Careful, Flavius. The Phoenix would not care to hear you say that. Alcanex shook his head. It does not matter. He exists. He is here. And forgive me. He crumpled with a dull clang, falling to his knees. He tore off his helmet and held out his sword, balanced across his palms. Fulgrim smiled beatifically, and in that moment, Fabius saw the ghost of the true Phoenician in him. Not the hero of Lost Chemos, but the arrogant creature who had been so easily seduced by false promises. The monster that valued his own perfection over the lives of his sons. I forgive you, my son, Fulgrim said softly. He looked around. I forgive you all, my wayward sons. He laid a hand on Alkanex's shoulder. "I know you, Flavius Alkanex. You were with me at Bizas. I remember." Alkanex gripped Fulgrim's hand. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I was with you. I followed you. I followed wherever you led." Fulgrim nodded. "And will you follow me now, my son?" "My Primarch," Alkanex said. "You are returned to us." Fabius saw he was weeping. "Yes, I will follow you. I will follow you." Around them, other Emperor's children were sinking to their knees, moaning in mingled sorrow and longing. Fulgrim looked at Fabius. "The Gene-Type Fabius," he said. "Is it safe?" His eyes blazed with new strength, new awareness, as if the truth of him had been restored in battle. Fabius felt the weight of that gaze, and he cursed the part of himself that responded. "It is," he said, his voice a hoarse rasp. He felt as if he was standing on the edge of some great chasm, and one more step would send him plunging into impossible gulfs. "Then we have succeeded," Fulgrim said. "We shall be reborn, my sons. We shall rise. And the galaxy shall rise with us, as it was always meant to do." His words echoed across the deck like soft thunder, and Fabius stepped back from the edge. You have to remember, this is not in the days of the Great Crusade. This was long after the Legion's corruption. It's shattering. These Marines have forsaken the Emperor, the Imperium, and yet the mere sight of their Primarch, the mere sight of Fulgrim, as he was meant to be, it speaks to their soul, moves them to tears. It's a remarkable testament to what the Primarchs were, what the Emperor created in them. The greatest leaders to ever bestride the galaxy. Demigods beyond comprehension. And this clone of Fulgrim remembered the errors of the heresy, his downfall, his betrayal of his beloved brother Ferrus. And it filled him with sorrow, deeply regretting the mistakes of the past. And he was fiercely loyal to the Emperor, to humanity, determined to rise up his sons and lead them across the galaxy. Again, the line, "We shall be reborn, my sons. We shall rise, and the galaxy shall rise with us, as it was always meant to do." So much promise. So much promise. But it was here that Fabius himself would end this promise before it would begin, dismayed at the reborn Primarch's loyalty to humanity, to the Emperor, and he would bargain the clone away to Trazyn the Infinite, the renowned Necron Collector, who imprisoned him within stasis, and as yet has never to be seen again. And now we may well have the true Fulgrim returning to the galactic stage, the Demon Primarch, emerging back into the lore and the tabletop in a major way. So could we see the clone return too? Could we see Fulgrim encounter the perfect clone of himself, as he once was? As we all want to. Well, it certainly wouldn't happen right away, and I've got to admit it is highly unlikely. But man, what a tantalizing possibility. Just imagine the image, the moment, as the demon Fulgrim stands before the pure Fulgrim, that loyal echo of what he once was. Again, I've got to be honest, the likelihood is slim, very slim, and I definitely don't think it would ever happen in a campaign. or that we would ever get a unique model for the tabletop, that's for sure. And I think that's because the clone of Fulgrim is a bit too niche, for want of a better description, too confined to one particular novel. So the only possibility there for me would be that we could maybe get the confrontation within a novel. But I think the difficulty beyond that is how it could transpire. Fulgrim and any Primarch is a major character within the lore, and a lot needs to happen before any kind of confrontation could ever take place. Firstly, the clone obviously needs to escape the confines of Trazin's collection, which, considering it's a stasis field, isn't going to happen without some help, that's for sure. Secondly, even if that were to happen, there needs to be a reason why the two Fulgrims would end up meeting, which is all a lot of ground to cover. But within a novel or two, could it happen? Well, yeah, sure. One premise could be Fulgrim himself finding out about the clone. The Emperor's children were aware of what Fabius had done. Word could have easily been passed on, or leaked out. And if so, let's be real here. If Fulgrim knew of a perfect copy of himself, do we really think he wouldn't want to see it? He absolutely would. His vanity alone would demand it. So one manner of the clone's escape could literally be Fulgrim himself leading a force of his sons to find it, assaulting Solomace, then either taking it with him, for whatever purposes Fulgrim might want to, or more likely, destroying it, infuriated at the sight of his old, loyal self, it refusing to bow to the weakness that he did. Or maybe Fulgrim even truthfully feeling a trace of sadness at being reminded of the man he used to be, the perfection before his fall. Sure, Fulgrim as he is now can apparently shapeshift into the man version he used to have, but it's not the same. It's not the same. He is no longer that Fulgrim. And he never can be. He can never be that pure, that perfect again. And I can easily imagine Fulgrim not wanting that version of himself to exist because of it, to not be reminded of it. As much as the traitor Primarchs are all truly lost to chaos, there is always that small, tiny part locked away deep within that regrets their action, that knows they are a slave. Not only this way would we get that epic encounter, but it would also deal with having the perfect clone out there somewhere. It's great having these things out there in the lore universe. It's the kind of thing that made 40k what it is. But if they did want to deal with it, wrap up the open-ended clone storyline, well, that's a pretty straightforward way of dealing with it, and one that makes sense to me, and would certainly be an epic read for sure. Now, another perhaps more complex option is having a warband of the Emperor's children attempting to free the Primarch, or attempting to acquire something to barter with Trazin for him. We saw the effect this Primarch had on them, immediately willing to bow to him, to their father, as he was. So they would surely be willing and able to do anything and everything to find him, to free him, and get him back. And if somehow the clone were freed, and at the head of a force of his sons, then I think him wanting to face his corrupted self, to purge it, as well as his corrupted legion, would make sense, and make for a great underlying story to the mainline narrative. Imagine it, an Emperor's Children's civil war. One, the depraved Chaos faction. The other, attempting to redeem themselves behind their true Primarch, as he once was, still loyal to the Emperor. I would give anything to read that storyline. However, as I've said, I do think having another Fulgrim out there running around the galaxy not only complicates things greatly, but it is also extremely unlikely because of it. That's really the reason I could never see it becoming involved with Guilliman, for example, or coming to his attention, because it all becomes a bit too complicated for the casual fan. The same reason for why I could never see the clone leading the Sons of the Phoenix chapter, for example. The much believed Ultima Founded chapter using Fulgrim's gene seed, which of course Belisarius is heavily teased to have experimented with. But overall, as much as I want to see a storyline of the two Fulgrims, I do just feel it is pretty unlikely, and absolutely wouldn't happen straight away anyway, as Fulgrim's return will surely be involved with the big end of edition event. My prediction is it will most likely be left out there as a tease and possibility to maybe one day come back in the future, that the clone will simply remain within Trazin's collection. But if I had a choice, well then I'm not going to lie, I would love to see an Emperor's Children's civil war, with the two aspects of Fulgrim going against each other. I don't know about you, but I'll be keeping my fingers crossed for that one, however unlikely it might be. But as always everyone, what do you think? With the expected return of the Demon Primarch Fulgrim, do you think we will ever see the return of his clone too? And if so, how do you think it could transpire? Would the true Fulgrim want to encounter this clone of himself, to destroy it, or to keep it? Or do you think the Sons of the Phoenician would want to free it for themselves? That maybe a faction would want to follow him rather than what their Primarch had become. As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.